Hello and welcome to the science video series of the summer course 2020. In this summer course we will follow a number of chapters that includes the basic knowledge of science. For example, if we choose chapter number 3 that will remind us with the classification of the substances. Okay, the substances or the objects that can be divided into two main classes, elements and compounds. And the elements could be divided into metals and non-metals. Okay, for example, if we have carbon, how can classify the carbon as a metal or non-metal? That will depend on the configuration, of course, the atomic number and the configuration and the properties of the metal and non-metal. So the elements as the simplest pure form that can be decomposed into another kind of element like the metals or the non-metals. Okay. Everything around us is made from individual elements or compounds. So, the elements contains only one kind of atoms. If we have helium, so the helium with the two electrons in the outer and the only first energy level for the atom of helium is the symbol of element. What about oxygen? When the oxygen atom combine with another oxygen atom with the same kind, so it's considered as an element. What is the element? One more time. The element is the simplest pure form that can be decomposed into another kind of element or another kind of atoms. What about the compounds? The compounds that contain two or more kind of atoms. If we take one atom or one of the oxygen atoms and make it combine with the hydrogen atoms. So we have two different kind of atoms. In this case, we can say that this is a form of compounds, not a form of elements. This is the difference between elements and compounds. It's very important to know that most atoms don't have full outer shells, don't have full outer energy level with the electrons. So they can gain or lose electrons. This is the way to differentiate between the kind of elements. We said before that the elements could be metal or non-metal. So the metal or the non-metal elements, the atoms of them can be gain or lose electrons. Why? To be stable or to reach to the nearest noble gas, as we say before. Okay, if we have the sodium. Sodium has 11 atomic number. Remember, the atomic number is the number of electrons could be in the atom of sodium. So we have 11 electrons. We can make the configuration with the first energy level K can hold 2 electrons. Then we have L can hold or carry 8 electrons. So count with me. We have 2, then 8, we have 10. So we have 1 electron remain to complete the 11 electrons. So the 1 electron that remained from the 11 electrons that can go on to the third energy level. So we have 3 energy levels for the sodium with the configuration 2 for the first, 8 for the second energy level, 1 for the third energy level. So the configuration for the sodium 281. How many protons in the sodium atom? We said before that the number of protons is equal to the number of protons. So we have atomic number with 11, the electrons number 11, so the protons equal 11. What about the electrons? The electrons for the atom of sodium is 11. What about the ion? What is the ion? We will know the ion definition in the next few seconds. Okay. Look at the following atoms. Circle the atoms that are the most stable. So we have number of atoms. We will choose the stable one. We have 8B. What is 8P? P is represent the proton. So we have 8 for the protons number. 8N, 8 for the neutrons number. The number of protons 8 and the number of neutrons 8. Okay. Then we have 2 positive and 2 without any charge. So we have 2 and 2. And we have 2 for negative charge. The negative charge represents the number of electrons. So we have 2 for the electrons, 2 for protons, 2 neutrons. And we have B with negative 10 and N with the, okay, and we have 2 electrons in the first energy level, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 for the second energy level. Which of them the more stability? Okay, so we need the atom that contain the energy level with the full one. So we choose the in the middle one. Why? Because we have the first energy level with 2 electrons. We know that the first energy level, for the maximum to fall the first energy level, we have to have 2 electrons. So this is the more stable atom. So the noble gases are the most stable because they are naturally have full outer shells. For the first with 2, or for the rest of them with 8 electrons. Okay. The ion formation. So we have the atom with the stable one, so we have noble gas. What about the other kind of atoms that is not stable? This will form the ions. Why? Because the atom that is not stable tend to gain or lose electrons and form an ion. If the atom lose electron, so we will call it the metal atom or the metal element. If the atom gain electrons, so it's non-metal atom. Another exercise to know the ion formation for the positive ion or the negative ion. We have lithium. The lithium that contain 3 electrons. Will this atom gain or lose electron? Okay, the atom lose or gain electron to complete the outermost energy level. So when we have 3 electrons, so we need 2 electrons in the first energy level, and we doesn't need the third one. Why? Because this is not necessary, or we have to complete the outermost energy level or the first and the outermost energy level for the lithium. So this atom tend to lose electron to complete the first one, to reach to the stability, to reach to the nearest noble gas. So lithium will lose one electron. Why? Because after the configuration, 2 and 1 lose the 1 electron. Okay, we have 8 for positive protons. And remember, positive protons is equal to the negative electrons in numbers. So we have 2 for the first energy level, and we have 2 for 6. We have 6 electrons in the second and outer. Okay. Aluminium. We have 13 electrons. First with 2, second with 8, the third with 3 electrons. So the configuration 2, 8, 3. Is it gain or lose electrons? Okay. We will make agreement that every atom that has from 1 to 4 electrons, it tends to lose them. And more than 4 electrons, it tends to gain electrons. So if we have lithium, so we have 1, it will lose it to complete the first and the outermost with 2 electrons to be the nearest noble gas as helium. We have 2, 6. So it more than 4 electrons. It will gain what? Gain 2 electrons to complete the outer with 8. The aluminium 2, 8, 3. So it less than the 4 electrons. It tends to lose the 3 electrons in the outer energy level. So what does the atomic number really do? The number of protons, or the atomic number, is compare between the kinds of elements. So when we compare between the number of protons and the number of electrons, it will form the kinds of element. We have metals and non-metals, and we have metalloids. It's between the metal and non-metal properties. And we have the noble gas. It's the star of the elements kind. It's like every atom or every element, it reached to be like it. So if we have metals, so it tend to lose electrons to be like the inert gases. If we have non-metal, it reached to gain electrons to be like the noble gases or inert gases. It's the star of the kind of elements. Okay, so we have metal and non-metal. Metal less than 4 electrons in the outermost energy level, so it tends to lose the electrons in the outer energy levels. Non-metals, it has the it's like of the difference. So we have the metals that has less than 4 electrons in the outer energy level, and we have non-metal that has more than 4 electrons, so it tends to gain electrons to complete the outer and reach to the nearest noble gas as a star. And we have the metalloids. It's make the mixture between the metals and non-metal properties. Okay. Now, how can we use these kind of elements to form compounds? Okay, we have covalent compound always contain non-metals. So non-metals like the carbon dioxide and ammonium, and we have several kind of compounds. We doesn't need to save it. Okay, we have the ionic compound. What is the ionic compound? It's kind of the metals and non-metals together. So the combination between metals and non-metals will form ionic compound, like the NaCl and magnesium oxide and the calcium carbonate. Okay, next we have the covalent compound. How we can form the covalent compound? If we have the hydrogen with hydrogen, this is like the two kind of hydrogen. So to form the covalent bond, we have two kinds of the same nonmetals. So the hydrogen is nonmetal, combined with the hydrogen, another atom of hydrogen, to form the hydrogen molecule or the covalent bond. So we have hydrogen with another hydrogen as two kind of the same nonmetal element that combine with a covalent bond to form a molecule of hydrogen. Okay, focus with me. We have one electron in the outer. So the hydrogen has one electron, one atomic number. It's combined together to form a covalent with this form. This is the form of covalent compound to form a hydrogen molecule. How? We have atomic number 1 for the hydrogen for each atom and the configuration 1. Okay, we have in the second hydrogen with one electron, of course. We have the chlorine with 17 atomic number or 17 electrons. We have 287 for the configuration for the chlorine. So the outer contain 7 electrons. How can the covalent bond form the molecule of hydrogen chloride? By the okay, this is the way. Second, we have the hydrogen and chlorine. Okay, the hydrogen has one electron in the outer energy level, and the chlorine has 7 electrons in the outer. It combined together by the covalent bond to form the hydrogen chloride in this form. Then we have the hydrogen with the carbon. The hydrogen has 1 electron in the outer. The carbon has 6 electrons. In this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 hydrogen atoms that combine with the carbon. Why? Because each of the hydrogen and carbon will share with 1 electron. So the first hydrogen share with 1, and the carbon share with 1 electron. The second hydrogen share with 1 electron, and the carbon share with the second electron. And we have 1 more with the hydrogen share with 1, and the carbon share with 1. Finally, we have the fourth carbon, the fourth hydrogen share with the fourth electron of the carbon. كده احنا عندنا 4. Okay, for the last exercise for the covalent bond, if we have the hydrogen with the 1 electron and the carbon has 6 atomic number, so we have the configuration 2, 4. The outer contain 4 electrons. What will happen in this case? The hydrogen will share 4 times with the carbon. Why? Because the carbon have 4 electrons. It needs 4 atoms of hydrogen. 4 atoms of hydrogen, each one share with the only electron they have. And the carbon shared with the 4 electrons in the outer energy level to form the molecules of the combination between the hydrogen and the carbon. Okay. How to get the valency of any element? The valency, it's like the number of electrons that can any atom share with the other, or the number of electrons that the atom will lose or gain. For example, we have the hydrogen. The valency of the hydrogen, of course, is 1. What about the hydrogen? If we have the hydrogen with 8 electrons or the 8 atomic number, the configuration of oxygen will be 2, 6. So, how many electrons that the oxygen will lose or gain? Of course, hydrogen, of course, the valencies is like the number of electrons that the atom can lose or gain. For example, we have the hydrogen. The hydrogen, of course, has valency 1 or monovalent. Why? Because the hydrogen have 1 electron. So it needs 1 electron to complete the outermost energy level, and the first energy level was 2 to reach the nearest noble gas as a helium. What about the oxygen? Oxygen has 8 atomic number. The configuration for the oxygen is 2, 6. So the oxygen need to gain or lose electron? Yes, of course. It needs to gain 2 electrons to complete the second energy level with 8 electrons. So the valency is the number of 2 electrons that the oxygen need to complete the outer energy level. So the valency of oxygen is 2. This is the way we have to know the valencies of every element that we have. So during the chemical reaction, while this element is active, of course it's active. If it gain or lose electron, it's active. What about the inner gases? Is not active or inactive. Okay, so we need to know its kind and how can react. Okay, for example, we have the chlorine one more time with 17 atomic number. How we can the configuration 287, the configuration of chlorine. That for gain electrons. How many electrons? 1 electron. Why? To complete the outer with 8 electrons. So it like increasing the negative charge of electrons that can compare between the positive protons and negative electrons. So the compare or the comparison between the number of protons and the number of electrons that form the kind of ion. So when the number of protons equal the number of electrons, so it equal. We have no ion. What happened when the number of electron increase? So the charge of electron will be increased. So it's negative by ion. So it's negative ion. What happened with the number of electron decrease? So the number of proton will be more than the number of electrons. The charges of proton with positive will be more than the charges of the electrons. So it will be positive ion. So when we make the comparison between the charges and the numbers between the protons and electrons, when the element or the atom gain or lose, so for example, the chlorine gain electrons, so it increase the charge of the electrons, increase the charge of the negative. So it's negative ion. Okay, more examples. We have the oxygen. The oxygen has atomic number, so we have to know the atomic number for first to know the ion or the kind of ion. We make the configuration. We have 2, 6, so it gained 2 electrons. So it increase the charges of the negative. So it form negative ion. The negative ion, it's like the non-metal elements. Okay, this is exercise for knowing the number of electrons, number of neutrons, number of protons. I will waiting for your answers for this exercise. It's very important. Please try to solve it by yourself.